We're on the road to 1 million subscribers, and when we get there, 5 of you will win a world trip to the most incredible places in history. Catch new episodes every night at 7 p.m. UK, 8 p.m. Europe over 2 p.m. US Eastern Time. Subscribe now, because the next chapter of history could be yours.
The Emperor of Shadows, Rome, was the beating heart of the world, but under Nero, it burned with fire and fear. His name became legend, a whisper of madness, lust, and divine punishment. Nero Claudius Caesar, the last of the Julio-Claudian line, rose with promise yet descended into infamy. Once hailed as a golden youth, he transformed into a tyrant wrapped in smoke and blood. He played the lyre while the empire trembled, or so history claims. Some saw him as an artist trapped in a ruler's body, others as a demon in human form. The great fire of Rome seared his legacy into eternity. Flames became symbols of his desires, his cruelty, and his eternal myth. To the Senate, he was a despot who mocked tradition. To the people, he was both benefactor and butcher, adored and cursed. Philosophers studied his descent as if examining a soul possessed. Theologians saw in him the echo of Antichrist, a shadow cast on Christian prophecy. Psychologists today might call him a narcissist, a man trapped by unchecked power. Yet myths, legends, and modern cinema shape him into something more, an eternal archetype. Nero is not merely history. He is a mirror reflecting how power corrupts, how desire consumes, how empires fall. This is the story of Nero, Rome's fire, Rome's lust, Rome's madness, a tale where history and myth burn together in the eternal night. Birth of a dynasty's child, Nero was born in 37 CE into a Rome already drowning in ambition and blood. His father, Gnaeus Domitius Ahenobarbus, carried a ruthless reputation of cruelty and greed. His mother, Agrippina the Younger, was far more than just a noblewoman. She was a force of destiny, descendant of Augustus, determined to shape Rome itself. The child Lucius Domitius was marked by omens, whispers of greatness and destruction. Ancient astrologers claimed his birth chart showed both glory and calamity. When Caligula ruled, Agrippina was exiled, her child pushed into obscurity. But fate, sharp and merciless, soon called him back to Rome's center. Through calculated ambition, Agrippina clawed her way into power again. She married Emperor Claudius, binding her son into imperial destiny. Claudius adopted Lucius, giving him a new name, Nero Claudius Caesar. The bloodline of Augustus ran once more in his veins. Nero grew among tutors, philosophers, and poets of renown. Seneca the Stoic was charged with shaping his mind and morals. They dreamed of molding a philosopher king, wise and merciful. But Rome itself was not a place for gentle rulers. The young Nero learned poetry, music, and Greek philosophy. He preferred the stage to the battlefield, the lyre to the sword. In his mother's eyes, Nero was the weapon of her ambition. She guided his steps, silenced rivals, and cleared his path to power. What began as a story of destiny seemed golden, radiant. But beneath the marble halls, shadows stirred, whispering of storms ahead. Nero was not yet emperor, but already history trembled. Rome would soon discover that brilliance and madness often share the same womb. The rise of the Golden Youth. At 16, Nero ascended the throne, the youngest emperor in Roman memory. The empire marveled, for a boy now ruled the world's greatest power. Agrippina stood proudly at his side, believing herself co-ruler of Rome. She envisioned a dynasty where her son's crown was her triumph. In his first years, Nero surprised the Senate with restraint. Guided by Seneca and Burrus, his rule began with promise. He reduced taxes, eased punishments, and sought the love of the people. Rome whispered, perhaps this emperor would be different, noble and just. Nero loved the arts more than politics or war. He sang, composed poetry, and performed before intimate audiences. At public games, he cheered with commoners, sharing in their joys. The people adored his presence, for he seemed human, even vulnerable. Yet Agrippina's shadow grew heavy upon him. Her ambition clashed with his desire for freedom and pleasure. She demanded influence over his court, his decisions, his very life. Nero resisted, yearning to escape her iron grip. Soon whispers filled the palace, plots, conspiracies, rivalries sharpened like blades. The boy emperor was becoming a man, but one torn in two. Seneca tried to balance philosophy with politics, yet his student drifted. Nero's passions burned brighter than the wisdom of his teachers. The empire saw a golden youth, radiant in promise. But within him, a fire already smoldered, unseen but relentless. The seeds of madness had been sown in brilliance. Rome would soon reap both beauty and terror from its emperor. The mother's shadow. Agrippina was no ordinary mother. She was Rome's empress in all but name. Her influence stretched across the empire, feared by senators and generals alike. She arranged alliances, orchestrated marriages, and wielded power like a sword. Nero's throne was her creation, but her control was suffocating. The young emperor felt caged by her dominance. Whispers of incest haunted the palace, scandals painting their closeness as sin. Roman historians hinted at forbidden intimacy, though truth blurred with propaganda. Whether real or rumor, the shadow of lust clung to their tale. Nero grew restless, turning to other women, other pleasures. Agrippina's fury rose, threatening his independence and authority. She warned him, without her, his throne would crumble. Her words cut like daggers, and Nero's resentment deepened. A power struggle erupted within the imperial palace. Mother and son became rivals, each plotting the other's fall. When Agrippina aligned with Britannicus, Claudius's natural son, danger sharpened. Nero saw betrayal, a threat to his imperial survival. Historians tell of poison, daggers, and failed assassination attempts. But the end came sudden. Agrippina was murdered on Nero's command. The tale of her death became a legend of cruelty. Her ship collapsed, her assassins finished the deed, her cries unanswered. Rome gasped, for matricide was the ultimate abomination. Even gods seemed to shudder at Nero's act. Freed from his mother, Nero believed himself untouchable. Yet the blood of Agrippina would haunt him forever. The boy emperor was gone, replaced by a shadowed sovereign. The fire of madness had been lit within Rome's palace. The Great Fire of Rome. In 64 CE, flames engulfed the city, devouring temples and homes alike. For 9 nights, Rome was a sea of fire, the world collapsing in ash. Legions of citizens fled as the sky turned crimson. Screams echoed against the marble, chaos ruling the empire's heart. Who started the fire remains history's greatest mystery. Some say chance, others accuse Nero himself of kindling the flames. Ancient chroniclers like Tacitus claimed he sang while the city burned. The image endured, an emperor playing music as Rome died. Whether myth or truth, the story stained his name forever. For the people, Nero became fire incarnate, destroyer of their world. In the ashes, Nero seized opportunity. He rebuilt Rome with grand avenues, golden palaces, and vast arenas. At its heart rose the Domus Aurea, the golden house of Nero, a palace of unimaginable luxury, stretching like a god's temple. Gold-leafed ceilings, rotating banquet halls, fountains of precious stones. It was not a home but a monument to hubris. The people whispered, he burned the city to build his dream. Senators raged, for his extravagance drained Rome's wealth. To shift blame, Nero pointed to a strange new sect. Christians, secretive and defiant, became his scapegoats. They were hunted, tortured, and burned alive in his gardens. History recorded their suffering, turning Nero into the first persecutor. The Great Fire was more than disaster. It was myth reborn. Rome's empire cracked, and its emperor became a monster in memory. From then on, Nero was forever bound to the flame. His name itself became synonymous with fire, cruelty, and ruin. The Golden House of Hubris. The ashes of Rome gave birth to a palace unlike any other. Nero's Domus Aurea, the Golden House, was both wonder and abomination. Covering acres of prime land, it gleamed with marble and gold. Its ceilings were painted with mythic gods, stars, and cosmic illusions. Banquet halls rotated with hidden mechanics, showering petals on guests. Fountains sprayed perfumes, while artificial lakes mirrored the heavens above. Statues of gods and heroes lined its vast courtyards. At its heart stood a colossal statue, Nero as the sun god. Rome gasped at the arrogance, for emperors were men, not deities. Yet Nero crowned himself Apollo reborn, artist and ruler divine. The people admired its beauty but cursed its cost. Taxes drained provinces and farmers paid for Nero's dreams. Historians called it proof of a soul intoxicated by power. Philosophers saw it as a metaphor, empire consumed by vanity. The Golden House was not merely a palace. It was Nero's psyche, built in stone, fire, and shadow. Every hall reflected his hunger for eternity. Every ceiling whispered of a man lost in illusion. To the elite, it was the greatest insult to tradition. To the people, it was the wound of fire reopened. The Senate muttered, emperors should defend, not deify themselves. But Nero, intoxicated with art, saw himself beyond mortal judgment. The Golden House survived only briefly in glory, but in myth it still stands, Rome's palace of madness. The artist Emperor Nero believed himself chosen, not as a warrior, but as an artist. He sang, wrote poetry, and performed upon gilded stages. In a society that revered generals and conquerors, he defied tradition. He declared, beauty, music, and drama were nobler than war. He performed tragedies dressed as gods, heroes, and lovers. His voice filled theaters, his presence demanded awe. But the Senate sneered, for emperors were not to play actors. The stage was sacred to the lowborn, not Rome's rulers. Crowds were forced to attend, forbidden to leave mid-performance. Some feigned death to escape his endless recitals. To Nero, the audience was his empire, the applause his power. He demanded Rome listen, for his art was divine revelation. He traveled to Greece, joining Olympic Games and sacred contests. Of course, he always emerged victorious, his crowns preordained. Historians mocked him as vain, self-indulgent, and delusional. Yet some argued he sought beauty in a brutal age. Psychologists today see an insecure boy in need of applause. His art masked wounds, loneliness, and fear of irrelevance. But in Christian theology, his stage became blasphemy. They saw him mocking gods, desecrating divine order. In myths across cultures, rulers who claimed divinity faced ruin. Nero became part of that timeless archetype. The emperor was no longer warrior, statesman, or philosopher. He was now actor, artist, and fool of eternity. The blood of rivals' power demands blood, and Nero spilled it without hesitation. First Britannicus, Claudius's true heir, poisoned during a feast. Then rivals in the Senate, accused of treason and executed. The empire ran red with purges, whispers, and betrayals. Even his beloved wife Octavia was not spared. Accused falsely of adultery, she was executed in cruelty. Her death shocked Rome, for Octavia had been innocent and kind. Yet Nero replaced her with Poppaea Sabina, his fiery mistress. Poppaea's beauty intoxicated him, her willpower commanded him. But love soon turned to violence, her fate sealed by rage. Pregnant with his child, she angered him with words. In fury, Nero kicked her, ending both her life and unborn. The act horrified Rome, yet no one dared oppose him. Fear silenced the Senate, while people whispered in shadows. Historians debated whether madness or despair drove his cruelty. But theologians saw divine justice closing in around him. Rome now knew Nero as tyrant, not golden youth. His name dripped with blood, his court heavy with dread. In psychology, he embodied unchecked impulse, the id unleashed. Desire and anger replaced reason, his throne shaking beneath him. Cross-culturally, his fall resembled kings cursed by gods. In Greek tragedies, hubris always birthed ruin. Nero's story was now no longer rise, but descent, a spiral of blood, fire, and doom without end. The persecution of the Christians. The fire of Rome needed a scapegoat, and Nero chose the Christians. They were a small sect, secretive, strange, and defiant. They refused Rome's gods, worshipped a crucified savior. To Romans, they were atheists, haters of mankind, and rebels. Nero declared them guilty of arson, enemies of the empire. His gardens became theaters of death, their bodies torches in night. Some were sewn into animal skins and torn by dogs. Others were crucified, left to rot as symbols of warning. The spectacle horrified even pagan citizens. Cruelty had become a performance, blood his entertainment. For Christians, Nero became the beast of Revelation. Whispers spread that he was Antichrist, Rome's demon emperor. In theology, Nero embodied apocalyptic terror, the shadow of Satan. Even after death, legends claimed he would rise again. The myth of Nero Redivivus haunted Christian imagination for centuries. He was the eternal persecutor, enemy of God's chosen. Psychology interprets his persecution as projection. Blaming outsiders for his failures soothed his wounded pride. Cross-culturally, scapegoating repeats in every empire. Minorities suffer when rulers fear their own weakness. Literature kept this memory alive, casting Nero as eternal tyrant. His cruelty became archetype, his persecution, eternal warning. The Christians died, but their faith grew stronger. Nero thought himself destroyer, but he forged their martyrdom. Rome had burned, but Christianity's fire had been lit. From ashes rose a faith that would outlast the empire itself. The fall of Seneca. Seneca had once dreamed of guiding Nero into wisdom. He taught moderation, justice, and the virtue of philosophy. But philosophy was no match for lust, rage, and vanity. Nero drifted, ignoring his teacher's warnings and pleas. Seneca asked to retire, weary of corruption. Nero consented, but suspicion poisoned their bond. When Piso's conspiracy sought Nero's death, Seneca was accused. Though evidence was thin, the emperor's wrath demanded blood. Nero ordered his old tutor to die by his own hand. The philosopher accepted with calm, as if death was his pupil. In a bath, he opened his veins, speaking to friends. His words echoed stoic courage, the triumph of philosophy over fear. To Rome, it was tragedy, the greatest mind slain by madness. To Christians, it was justice, pagan wisdom silenced by God's plan. Yet Seneca's writings survived, his voice stronger than Nero's fire. He taught resilience, calm in chaos, meaning in suffering. Psychology sees in him the tragic mentor archetype, the wise guide destroyed by the flawed hero he raised. Cross-cultural myths repeat this story endlessly. From Greek epics to modern tales, wisdom falls to arrogance. Seneca's death marked the empire's descent into pure tyranny. The emperor had silenced conscience, leaving only his shadow. Rome mourned, but silence reigned in the Senate. No one dared stand against a god who burned his teacher. Nero had killed wisdom itself, and with it, the last thread of redemption snapped. Greece and the dream of glory. Nero longed for Greece, the land of art and beauty. He saw himself not as Caesar, but as Apollo reborn. In 66 CE, he journeyed across seas, performing in contests. Every city crowned him victor, every arena bowed in flattery. He raced chariots, sang epics, and danced like a god. The emperor demanded applause, and applause he received. Yet behind the cheers lay mockery and resentment. Rome needed soldiers, not a traveling actor on stage. The Senate seethed, the legions grumbled, provinces plotted rebellion. But Nero basked in crowns, blind to crumbling empire. Psychologists call it escape, the ruler fleeing reality through art. Like a child, he hid in fantasy, fearing the weight of rule. Theology saw it as blasphemy, an emperor stealing glory from gods. Christians whispered that divine judgment drew near. Cross-cultural parallels exist in kings lost to dreamlands, pharaohs who worshipped art while Egypt starved, emperors who painted as nations burned. Literature preserved the irony, the emperor who sang while Rome cracked. History cast him as performer, never ruler. But to Nero, Greece was his heaven, his stage eternal. He had won immortality, or so he believed. When he returned, his empire awaited with fury. Revolts burned hotter than the fire he once survived. The dream of Greece would be his last glory. The shadow of rebellion now stretched across Rome's horizon. The revolts begin. The empire had grown weary of Nero's madness. In Judea, Britain, and Gaul, revolts erupted with fury. Governors once loyal now raised banners of independence. The legions muttered, hungry for leadership, weary of shame. Galba of Spain declared open defiance. The Senate watched, sensing that Nero's reign cracked at last. Nero panicked, his confidence shattered, his fantasies collapsing. He had no general's courage, no soldier's loyalty. While Rome's enemies marched, Nero performed in theaters. The people mocked. Their emperor was actor, not defender. Psychology sees this as collapse of the ego. Fantasy could no longer shield him from reality's storm. Cross-cultural archetypes mirror his plight. Rulers who ignored war for pleasure always fell in ruin. The Senate moved against him, declaring him enemy of the state. Even the Praetorian Guard abandoned their emperor. Alone in his palace, Nero raged and despaired. He cursed the world, cursed gods, cursed destiny itself. But history offered no mercy. The empire demanded an end to madness. The emperor who once commanded millions now stood abandoned. Even slaves refused to aid him, fearing his curse. The world closed in, and Nero's throne turned to dust. Rome awaited his death, its tyrant cornered at last. The last night Nero fled the city, disguised, trembling in fear. His once mighty guards vanished. His friends betrayed him. He reached a villa, only a few loyal left. The world's master reduced to a hunted animal. He begged for courage, yet wept for his fate. "Have I neither friend nor foe?" he cried in despair. The Senate declared him public enemy, condemned to death. Nero knew capture meant humiliation, torture, and execution. In the silence of night, he faced himself. The artist, the tyrant, the monster, the boy abandoned. He tried to summon courage to take his own life, but fear paralyzed him, and he trembled in agony. Finally, with aid, he plunged the dagger into his throat. As blood poured, he whispered, "What an artist dies in me." It was both confession and delusion, beauty and madness. The world's stage went dark, and Rome's tyrant was gone. Psychology reads his words as narcissism even in death. Theology sees the fall of Antichrist, judgment completed. Cross-cultural myths speak of tyrants who perish in despair. No army, no glory, only silence and shame. Nero died at 30, Rome freed yet haunted. For his ghost lingered, his myth refusing to die. The tyrant was gone, but the legend was eternal. Nero had entered the realm of myth, fire everlasting. Nero redivivus, the eternal return. Rome whispered that Nero had not died. Some believed he would return, leading armies of vengeance. 3 impostors arose, claiming his name and throne. Provinces trembled, fearing the emperor's ghost returned. For Christians, this myth became prophecy. They called him the Beast, reborn at world's end. Revelation's visions bore his shadow. The number 666, some claimed, spelled Nero's name. Theology cast him as eternal persecutor, Rome's dark spirit. His myth grew larger than his life ever had been. Psychology sees this as trauma's echo. Societies could not let go of terror, so they resurrected it. Cross-cultural myths of cursed kings mirror the tale. Arthur would return, so too would Rome's monster. Literature embraced it, weaving Nero into centuries of fear. Medieval chronicles, Renaissance plays, modern novels, his shadow endured. He became archetype of tyranny, enemy of God, destroyer of beauty. The man was gone, but the symbol immortal. In every age, Nero reappeared. The world cannot forget fire once it has burned. The tyrant became timeless, his ghost walking through history. Nero redivivus, the eternal return of Rome's shadow. Nero in theology and prophecy. Early Christians saw in Nero the face of apocalypse. His cruelty became symbol of evil incarnate. Church fathers wrote of him as Antichrist. Revelation's beast echoed his tyranny and blood. For centuries, his name was cursed in sermons. Rome's persecutor became theology's eternal warning. Medieval scholars debated if he lived in hell itself. Some swore his soul would rise with Satan's hosts. Theology turned history into prophecy, memory into myth. Nero was no longer man, but cosmic enemy. Psychology interprets this as fear made immortal. Trauma became doctrine, wound became prophecy. Cross-cultural parallels exist in villains made eternal. From demons in Asia to trickster gods, evil repeats endlessly. Literature seized the image of Nero the Damned. Dante placed him in hell. Shakespeare mocked him on stage. His cruelty became a metaphor for human corruption. The Antichrist was always, in some way, Nero reborn. Even modern thinkers recall him as archetype of destruction. Theology, psychology, and myth all converge in his name. He was emperor, tyrant, Antichrist, symbol eternal. Nero became more than history. He became prophecy. Nero, in literature and culture, writers could not resist Nero's story. His life burned like theater itself, tragedy and madness combined. Tacitus painted him as cruel artist, Rome's shame. Suetonius gave lurid details, stories of lust and murder. Christian writers cast him as Satan's pawn. Medieval poets saw him as lesson in hubris. In Renaissance plays, he strutted upon stage. Shakespeare alluded to him as symbol of tyranny. Novels of later centuries revived his shadow. From Quo Vadis to modern historical epics, he returns. Even films cast him in flame and excess. A golden youth turned monster, forever cinematic. Psychology reads these tales as society's therapy. We retell tyrant stories to heal collective fear. Cross-cultural literature echoes Nero's archetype. Cruel kings in epics of India, cursed rulers in China. He became timeless character, the tyrant artist, cursed by gods. Art itself could not forget the artist who burned. In modern times, scholars debate his legacy. Was he monster or misunderstood dreamer? But literature answers with myth, not fact. In every age, Nero is still alive, still burning. Psychology of a tyrant. What was Nero truly? A monster, a child, or a man broken by power? Psychologists see narcissism in his endless hunger for applause. Every stage, every act, was cry for love unmet. Perhaps he never escaped his mother's shadow. Agrippina's grip shaped him into creature of rebellion and rage. His cruelty may have been defense. Fear turned outward. Power gave him freedom to act every impulse. Hubris blinded him to consequence. Desire devoured restraint. The empire became canvas for his inner torment. Cross-cultural psychology sees tyrants repeating the same patterns. Isolation, flattery, fear. They rot the mind of kings. Theology frames him as warning against pride. Eternal damnation follows those who claim godhood. Modern analysis seeks the child beneath the crown. A boy who wanted art, but was given empire. The stage was his therapy, applause his medicine. But medicine became poison, illusion became death. Nero shows how power magnifies wounds, not heals them. His story is both tragedy and diagnosis of tyranny. Legacy of fire. Nero is gone, yet his name still burns. The tyrant who sang, the emperor who killed, the artist who fell. Rome tried to erase him, damn his memory, but his ghost lingered, haunting centuries of fear and art. For Christians, he was beast, persecutor, Antichrist eternal. For historians, he was warning of empire's corruption. For psychologists, he was fragile child turned monster by power. For literature, he was character of fire and tragedy. Cross-culturally, he became symbol of hubris and ruin. Every empire has its Nero, every age its tyrant. His name still speaks of madness and lust, but also of art, of beauty, twisted by power. Nero's life was a stage, his empire the audience, his death a performance, his memory a myth. History could not forget him. Theology could not forgive him. Myth could not release him. Prophecy could not silence him. He is both man and monster, both artist and tyrant, the eternal flame of Rome's shadowed glory. And so, Nero remains, fire, lust and madness, forever burning in history's night.
You've just unlocked another chapter of sacred truth, and your journey with God's wisdom continues. Return tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, when a fresh revelation may brighten your path and strengthen your faith. Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell so you never miss a blessing-laden episode. Share this scroll of knowledge with family and friends. For when truth is shared, God's mercy envelops us, guiding and blessing in every circumstance. Your curiosity is our compass. Tell us in the comments which mystery you'd like to explore next, and together we'll unveil it by His grace. Until next time, stay faithful, stay watchful. May God's mercy and blessings be upon you always.